Welcome, Minister. I'm talking to the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, the Honourable Michael Gunner, MLA. Welcome to Larrakia Radio, Aboriginal TV, Australian Indigenous Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Chief Minister, there's a few things in the news lately that we wanted to ask you about that have a few questions above them. Now, can you just talk to us about that?
So I recently went to Jabiru for the Marble Festival, and I spoke there about Aboriginal affairs at large and how can we do better as a territory or even as a country to recognise the people who were here first. Now, it's a fact that across this continent for 60,000 years, people spoke languages that weren't English. So how do we embrace that, value that, and make it part of the fabric of who we are as a country? How do we celebrate being Australian? So January 26, historically important date. Good things and bad things happened from that date. The disease, the dispossession started from that date, but who we are as a modern nation also started from that date. So how do we take all of that and properly celebrate who we are as Australian? The commemoration and the celebration. We've got to heal the hurt, the heart of our nation, I think, and you can only do that if you properly acknowledge, accept the facts of what happened when we started as a modern nation. And to the same extent, the massacres that occurred in Australia, the territory, but Australia at large. On Anzac Day, I pay respect. On Remembrance Day, this year I'm going to be going to Hawaii and paying respect and recognising our relationship with the US Marines here in the territory. Aboriginal people died for their country, protecting their country, loving their country through those massacres, but at no stage do we pay respect to them. Next year is the 90th anniversary of the Coniston Massacre. I am going to be working with the traditional owners, going down and paying respect, but we should have, and it shouldn't be me who decides this, we should have somewhere in our calendar an annual day of observance for the massacres. So I think there's a number of things that we can do to pay proper respect to the first people, include them positively in the fabric of who we are as a community, and remember and pay respect to some of the things that they fought for and died for as well.
Well, Chief Minister, that's the first time they've actually heard one of the leaders of our, not only the Northern Territory, but of our nation, speak so strongly about this. And I'm fully aware of everything you've just said, having Indigenous background, but also as an Indigenous educator, and my role here at Aboriginal Broadcasting Australia. Now, I find that quite not only amazing, but very interesting, and it also shows us reconciliation in action, if you want to use those terms, because there does need to still be a lot of healing, but also celebration about who we are as Indigenous people and also who we are as a nation. Now, on another level, and I'm sure that our communities and our people listening, our Indigenous people here in the Territory listening across Australia, we're interested to know where this passion of yours comes from.
Born and bred Territorian, and my family is 4 generations strong in the Territory. So my great-granddad came to the Territory in the early 30s. And I often say to people who are curious about Aboriginal affairs or want to talk about it, I say, I love this place. My family's been here 4 generations. Imagine if you've been here 1,000. Try and put that in some perspective. The connection to country you must have if you've been here for 1,000 generations. So for me, it comes from a love of who we are as a Territory as a whole. And then on a very personal note, I'm proud to say I've got some Aboriginal family. I'm not Aboriginal, but I have Aboriginal family. And it's made me think a lot about things, learning as I grew up quite late in life, that my uncle was a member of the stolen generation, Peter Gunner, from Utopia country. And I didn't get to know that till quite late in life. So part of our family healing or our family story was, for me, getting to know some of my Aboriginal family who live out in Utopia and the country they live on and they love and the circumstances that confront them, and recognising, I think, at a practical level, not just a theoretical level, who we are as a Territory. So for me, it comes back to the love of the Territory and the complicated families we all have.
Well, that's a really wonderful story, because I think it's important for everyone, whoever's watching or listening in, to know that we are such a diverse community, and we have a very strong loyalty to our place and our people, no matter who we are in the Northern Territory. And to that, Chief Minister, what is your vision going forward?
I think we have to find a way to grow the territory together. 50% of land in the Northern Territory is owned by Aboriginal people under Australian law. 80% of our coastline, 30% of our population. We've got to find a way to do this together. So I'm very passionate about developing the North, economic development, progress. But we've got to do it together. We've got to involve Aboriginal people at the start. There's lots of great ideas that come across my desk at times. I often say to people, have you spoken to the landowner? Because you've got to speak to the landowner. It's their land. Talk to them first before you talk to me. And I think culturally we've got to make this change economically. People complain sometimes about the difficulty of doing business in the territory. I don't think it's difficult. I just think they forget to talk to the landowner up front. If you do that, it's actually pretty straightforward. We've got an amazing potential to the territory and to the north. Half the Australian economy is basically out of the north of Australia, and we've got 5% of the population. Imagine if more people lived here, how we could actually embrace that potential and grow it. So I think we've got some really exciting things we can do together, and I do believe the Northern Territory can lead the nation. We are nimble, we're agile, and we're sensitive to a lot of the issues I think that down south are theoretical, they consider it a distance. It's real to us. You walk the streets of Alice Springs and you hear the most ancient languages on earth. Now that's special. That's a tourism opportunity as much as it is a thing that we value socially and culturally. We are special. Let's celebrate it. Let's embrace it. And let's go forward together.
Would you be looking at attracting more people to come to the Northern Territory?
Absolutely. I think we have to grow our population. There's a lot of talk about gas at the moment, or the energy prices on the East Coast. And the Prime Minister and others want our gas taken from the north to the south. When you ship gas across that distance, it actually becomes more expensive. So we've actually got excess gas here already. We, as a government, own a lot of gas. We're building a pipeline to the East Coast, Gemina Pipeline, going through Indigenous land with a good Illawarra, and it's going to have good local Indigenous employment on it. So we're going to send some gas to them. But I think our message to the south is, why don't you move to where the gas is? It's actually closer, it's cheaper. Move here, do your business here, grow the territory with us. Why should we send our gas to you down there? Move to the gas, move to where we are, do business here. So I think sometimes people down south try and solve all the problems with the southern aspect. And if you just take a step back and look at the country as a whole, it actually makes a lot more sense to have people move here and business move here rather than try and follow an expensive process and get gas and energy shipped to the south.
And also, to that, Chief Minister, you know, the potential for growth, economic development and growth, as you say, with developing the north, and with your recent contribution to particularly involving Indigenous leaders in developing the north is commendable, because we've been waiting for this opportunity for so long. And with our opportunity to not only develop our communities into thriving communities, we also have access to, relatively close access to, our Asian neighbours who perhaps in time to come will be looking for the products that we may develop.
Yeah, if you look to the north, our northern neighbours, there's a large number of them and they're growing and they're going to be hungry. I always like to think about their appetites. We've sold a lot of cattle, obviously, to the north for a long time, so protein. But when you look at what they're going to need long term, they actually want soybean. So everywhere I've gone to the north, Japan, Korea, China, Indonesia, Singapore, people have talked to me about soybean. So we've got 2 trials at the moment, looking at a third one. So tempeh, even soy cheese or soy milk. It's amazing what you can do with a soybean, not just soy sauce. There's a huge appetite to the north for Northern Territory food, and I think we can embrace that. And it's a classic example of one way Aboriginal people can use their land sustainably for jobs locally and for a market to the north. And I think that's something we really should explore.
Absolutely. And just listening to the talk, discussions around Indigenous economic development in line with developing the north, there's also the potential for prawn.
Oh, prawn, absolutely. So I think this is a great example of a project that has embraced local Indigenous owners. So there's an Indigenous land use agreement being signed up at Lejeune Station near the border with WA. I don't know the details of that, but I've heard it's an excellent Ilua. There's also going to be land at in Gunpoint and at Bino Harbour in Darwin, so hatcheries and brood stock. So I think 1,600 jobs in total, about 300 based in Darwin, a lot based out near the border. But a fantastic example of working with local people about what they want from their land. So involving the owners early, the traditional owners early, and that prawn farm, when it's fully developed, will be worth more, the same or more, than a whole live cattle trade. Now, we've got the busiest live cattle port in the Southern Hemisphere. So to put that into perspective, is extraordinary amount of prawn that we'll be selling to the north mainly, though there's people in America and others that want that prawn as well. It's going to be very, very popular. Big, juicy prawns. And there's probably going to be some good fishing around there as well when you think about the nutrients going out to sea. So if you're a wreck fisherman, it might be a handy place to fish too. But a lot of really good, juicy prawns.
Well, that's really good. That's good, positive news. And also, it's something that our communities would embrace. I know that. I come from community. But, and also, Chief Minister, with the changing tide as economies do change, I guess it's time to become more innovative. And also, when you look at the Tiwi Islands and what's going on there, across these different industry, Indigenous agribusiness, as you say, has potential. I think we're actually, some of us are sitting at the table for the first time.
I think a great example of diversity of product or innovation and what we can do is the space industry that the Gumatch are looking at out at in Northeast Arnhem Land, where they're in conversation with NASA and others. So Equatorial Launch Australia, I believe, are the company, but NASA have been out talking to them about it and the potential to launch satellites, non-military, don't worry, non-military, but essentially low-orbit satellites from East Arnhem Land. I think it's fantastic to say to kids going out to school there, you can grow up and be a rocket scientist and do it at home. It's fantastic.
Well, it is fantastic, and it's exciting because Aboriginal Broadcasting Australia is looking at new technologies. We've developed our own, and now we feel as though, wow, here's more opportunity. Because many of us have fought and actually fought for years, like in Kembe, and have had our land handed over. And it's that, even though we have mechanisms and connections with our land councils, our traditional owners, a lot of us are saying, well, now what?
Yeah. How do we use it? How do we tell our story? How are we in control of our story? And I think that's something that we should embrace I don't want to say the small extent, but I think it's fantastic that we've seen Baker Boy rapping in Yolnamata, for example. I think it's fantastic to see the celebration and ownership of Indigenous language and living language, but you being in control of your story. That's a small example through song. A bigger example is through what you're doing here with the broadcasting of the story and being in control of the radio station, being in control of the TV station, being in control of your story. And we want to do something similar on the ground from a territory government point of view. How does local decision making work? How does treaty work? And one example of that would be with local decision making, saying it's not about local government, it's not about territory government, it's not about federal government. Let's talk about the things that impact on you in your lives and your community. So say Wadair, they've got the Cardew Alliance that they're establishing there, or is established. We sit down with Cardew Alliance, potentially say, right, what are the things that you want control of in your local area? Schools, health clinics, law and order, housing, etc. That's mainly territory government things, not local government. Roads, some of those are local government, some are territory government, some are Australian government. But sit down and work out all those issues are, what you want control of, to what extent you want control of them. Then we might do a contract or a service level agreement or something that government can't tear up because there has to be certainty. We say, right, you're in charge of that. So let's actually negotiate it out. Say, right, you're in charge of that. And we let you delegated authority or something like that. So you are in control of the things that impact on your lives. And then there's every capacity that that contract actually evolves into treaty, which has proper recognition of ownership, proper recognition of what happened on that country, respect the other things that people might want built into a treaty. That's one example of how you can have treaty. There's plenty of examples of treaty. I don't want to dictate what treaty is, but what I do want to say is I'm open as a government, we are open as a government to doing treaty and working out what it means. And I think in the territory context, it's treaties. I don't think one treaty works. I think you have to do treaties place by place. But that, when I explain how you can get to treaty, I think that's one practical example of how you reach a treaty that actually provides not just a symbolic recognition, but a practical recognition and provide practical, meaningful change to how people live in that community. So how do we do that? How do we get there as a government? How do we work with you? I think the Cardew Alliance is an excellent example because they've already formed themselves and started working towards this. But I know at Yuendamu and other places, there are excellent local groups working towards similar things. So that's not saying what is special. Of course, what is special, but others are doing similar work too.
That's something close to my heart. I've been working on treaty for a very long time. I wrote a PhD on it. But listening to you, you get it. From my point of view, you get it because those way back when a group of men, senior men, actually first petitioned for a treaty, they wanted exactly that. They wanted practical outcomes. They wanted the chief minister or the government of the Northern Territory or Australia to actually go around to the different tribes, groups, and work out what suits that particular community group. And it was all about allowing our people to dictate or determine what is best for them. So that's really good to hear that you're open, but also practical about the way to go about it. Now, Chief Minister, is there much more you want to sort of talk about?
So we want to work as hard as we can on providing meaningful change to people's lives. So out at Maningrida, for example, as we're doing in Ramaging and a few other places, we want to do the Room to Breathe program, which provides those extra rooms on someone's house and the meaningful change to what and how they're living. So we're working on that. I know at Maningrida there's significant interest in improving the barge landing, which we have finally secured. So the money's been there for a while, but it's all been about trying to get I think everyone out there knows the lease issues, get the lease sorted. We've got permission to upgrade what's currently there, and we're still working through the permission to actually double the size of the barge, which would actually make it, I think, the largest barge landing in the territory or close to the largest barge landing in the territory, which would be fantastic. So we're working through that. I think Maningrida has got a lot of positive energy at the moment. They've got a fantastic art scene. So we're obviously working with them how we can support their master plan. So it's theirs, they own it, around the art gallery they've got there, moving the museum up to that. How do you include the fabric as well to celebrate what's a fantastic institution there already? That art gallery is brilliant already. People come in, tourists come in all the time. How do we take that and promote it? One of the things I love, or it's a rare privilege for me, is to visit community and see the art galleries that we've got out there or the community art centres. So we've got an arts trails policy specifically about supporting those and opening them up to more tourists. So we can talk about the good things that happen in the Aboriginal community, because too often the conversation's about the negative. There's lots of really positive things that happen in Aboriginal communities. One of them is arts and culture. There are already fantastic community art centres. So it's not inventing something new. It's about taking something that's already good and elevating it and supporting local people. So that's, again,
it is so important to the cultural and spiritual and the health and well-being and also the ongoing teachings and learning of Aboriginal cultures right across Australia, but so importantly in the Northern Territory. Now I'm going to bring you back to the local traditional owners, Larrakia, who are the traditional owners of this land where we are broadcasting and also of our parliament. How are things going with the connections with the Larrakia?
I think it's really positive at the moment. So Larrakia Nation's come out of administration at the moment, which is great. We're working with them really positively around some of their social programs. We've had some really good meetings with the Larrakia Development Corporation about some of their ideas and what they want to work on. And I think Darwin and the Larrakia is one of the best examples we can give about place names. So one of the things I said in Jabiru at the Marble Festival was, how do we better acknowledge or use the names that have been for places for centuries, thousands of years?
It's very important.
And for me, I hope I get this right, Darwin sits on Garamilla country. And how many people know that we sit on Garamilla country? So Alice Springs sits on Mabantua country. There's a Garmalong festival that's held. Now, a couple of years now, the Garmalong festival has been going.
Successfully.
And I remember saying, so is Garmalong the country the country that Darwin sits on? And then I was told, no, it's actually Garamilla. So I hope I've got that right.
Well, Chief Minister, you can't get it wrong. If you say, look, if you go by the old people, if you do things and say things with a good heart, you can't be wrong. So even within the Larrakia community, we have many names for the same places, and there are several names for the same thing. So if the intention is good and you say it with a good heart, you can't go wrong.
Thank you. Well, can I ask what you would call the country Darwin sits on? Is that appropriate?
Well, we're Larrakia. I often open welcome to country with Gwalra Darniki Larrakia Gullamring. Well, that's another word for Larrakia.
Yep.
But this is Larrakia country. So, we can define it, but essentially this is Larrakia, and welcome to Larrakia country.
So I want to find a way to, in the fabric of Darwin, better acknowledge and pay respect to the original names of places. So one example I used in press conferences recently is, I always talk about the old tank farm site. There must be a proper local name we can use instead of the old tank farm site. So this work. So I've asked the place names committee to sit down and work through those things, so that we can start making the Larrakia people and the local language part of the fabric of Darwin.
Well, I think that is a very positive step towards not only awareness for the wider community and our visitors from overseas and interstate, but also for Larrakia, many Larrakia who didn't have the advantage of actually growing up in a Larrakia language-speaking family. There are many of us. My father spoke 5 languages, including Larrakia. Yeah. When the Kembe land claim was happening, I would have to translate to my father when I gave evidence, and the Larrakia names, and also some of the Wajikan names, So no matter who we are as Larrakia, what level of knowledge we have or language, grasp of the language, if we have a leader of the Northern Territory, situated with our parliament on our land, who is making an effort to bring back those names, it's going to benefit everybody. So that's a good thing.
I think it's part of healing too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our relationships within our own families, communities, our groups, our key organisations, representative organisations such as the Northern Land Council. I would say that it's the best it's ever been.
Language is culture and it is identity. And at the moment, I feel the Larrakia have been too excluded from the CBD of Darwin. I know we have got some names for suburbs and streets, but when you look at the CBD, I don't feel the Larrakia are there. And how can we do that better? And in doing it better, we will be better.
And we'll increase our presence, and it will be, as you say, very healing for all of us. So on that note, Chief Minister, I'd like to thank you so much for coming into Aboriginal Broadcasting Australia, and we're very pleased and privileged that you came to speak to us today, and we hope we can speak to you very soon.
Absolutely.